Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Mohammed Layiq Sediqi, the father of Holophase. Part 6: Alphabet Hierarchy System. Remember the language we are learning. There is one field, phi, the holophase, one continuous cyclic movement from which all of reality unfolds. When phi begins to change, its first derivatives appear, and with them the three dimensions show themselves at once: time as omega, space as k, and motion as v, built from both. Every higher derivative is a finer question about how phi changes, and each one casts three shadows together: a time shadow, a space shadow, and a motion shadow. These echoes mix and weave into one another, forming the patterns we call fields, particles, bodies, thoughts, and worlds. In this picture, everything that exists is a living tapestry of phi, endlessly echoing through its derivatives and their dimensional shadows. Today, we listen to just one of those echoes. We are in Episode 8, the pure abstract language. In parts 1 to 4, we explored phi as a pure mathematical creature, as pure potential, with shift symmetry, living on a circle instead of a line. In part 5, we began Book 8.2, the abstract alphabet. We met derivatives as pure symbols, letters of a code that has not yet been spoken, formal answers to the question of how phi changes. Today, in part 6, we discovered that these letters are not lying around like loose stones. They are organized. They form a hierarchy, a structured system with levels, families, and relationships. Our focus in this part is the alphabet hierarchy system of the holophase language. How first order, second order, higher order, and mixed derivatives form a coherent alphabet for describing every possible pattern of change that phi can express. I want you to imagine two different rooms that both contain letters. In the first room, letters are scattered everywhere. Some are on the floor, some on shelves, some in boxes, some stuck under chairs. If you wanted to spell a word, you would have to search through the whole room, hunting for each letter one by one. There is no order, no system, just a chaotic pile. In the second room, the same letters are present, but they are organized. The simplest letters are in the front. The more complex ones are further back. There are sections for basic letters, sections for combined letters, sections for rare letters you only need once in a while. If you want to spell something, you know exactly where to go. The space itself guides you. The derivative alphabet of phi is like the second room. The same infinite collection of possible derivatives could in principle be a messy pile. But the holophase language does not treat them that way. It arranges them into a hierarchy that reflects how deeply you are asking about change. First-order derivatives are the primary letters. Second-order derivatives are nuance letters. Higher-order derivatives are refinement letters. Mixed derivatives are cross-linking letters that tie the time and space questions together. This is not only tidy bookkeeping. It mirrors how we, as humans, naturally think about change. When you try to understand how something is evolving, you do not start by asking a 10th-order question. You start with the simplest. Is it increasing or decreasing? Then you ask whether that increase is speeding up or slowing down. Then you ask how steady that speeding up is. You move step by step up a ladder of questions. The alphabet hierarchy system is simply phi's version of that ladder. So in this part, we will do three things together. First, we will walk through the main levels of the hierarchy, from first order upwards, and give them each a clear, simple role. Second, we will see how the hierarchy is expressed in all three echoes at once, in time, in space, and in motion. And third, we will see why this organization matters for science, for falsifiability, and even for the way you look at your own life. Let us begin with the first level of the ladder. First order, the primary letters. First, we meet the first-order derivatives, the primary letters of the holophase alphabet. In our roadmap, we named 4 of them as especially central: omega, k, d phi, and v. Omega is the time derivative of phi. It asks, how does phi change in time? If phi is like the hand of a clock moving around a circle, omega is how fast that hand turns. If phi is like the phase of a musical note, omega is the pitch, the number of vibrations per second. Omega is the basic rhythm letter of the language, the first way we talk about timing. Wherever there is a pulse, a beat, a regular tick, an oscillation, there is an omega standing quietly behind it as a symbol of how fast in time. K is the spatial gradient of phi. It asks, how does phi change in space? If phi is like the height of a landscape, k is the slope of the ground under your feet and in every direction. If phi is like the temperature in a room, k is how quickly the temperature changes as you walk from the window to the door. It is the basic textual letter of the language, the first way we talk about spatial structure and contrast. D phi is the total differential, the unified answer to the question, how does phi change when we move in spacetime? It combines the time changes and the space changes into one symbolic object. You can imagine it as phi's overall sensitivity to being nudged in any direction in the spacetime arena. If you could poke reality slightly in any direction, d phi would tell you how strongly the underlying phase would respond. V, which we will later recognize fully as a propagation letter, is built from omega and k together. It asks a subtler question. How must I move through space and time in order to stay on the same phase crest? Imagine surfing on a water wave. There is a particular speed at which you have to move to remain on top of the same part of the wave. That speed is like v. It belongs to the motion echo of the language, blending the timing of change and the spatial pattern of change into one symbol of movement. Even in the pure abstract language, where we have not yet tied these letters to specific experiments or physical systems, they already stand out. They are the simplest, most immediate responses to the question, how does phi change? That is why we call them primary letters. They are the vowels of the holophase alphabet, the sounds that appear in almost every word. You can already start to notice them in your own experience. When you listen to a humming fridge, your ear is unconsciously reading omega, the rhythmic rate of vibration. When you step from shade into sunlight and feel the warmth increase, your skin is reading K, the spatial gradient of temperature. When you walk beside someone and adjust your pace so that your steps stay in phase with theirs, you are acting like V, maintaining a constant phase relationship through motion. Phi language lives in your nervous system already. We are just giving names to its letters. Second order, the nuance letters. Now we climb to the second level, the second order derivatives, the nuance letters. If first order derivatives tell us how is it changing, second order derivatives tell us how is that change itself changing. They add tone, curvature, and flavor to our description. Alpha is the time derivative of omega. It asks, how does the rate of change in time itself change? If omega is the tempo of phi's motion, alpha is whether that tempo is speeding up, slowing down, or staying steady. In everyday life, you feel alpha very clearly. When a car calmly cruises at constant speed, alpha is close to zero. When the driver presses the accelerator and you are gently pushed back into your seat, alpha is positive. When the driver brakes and you are pulled forward, alpha is negative. Alpha measures the kindness or harshness of changes in speed. There is also the spatial analog of alpha, which we can loosely call spatial acceleration, or simply the way k changes further in space or in time, depending on context. This symbol asks, how does the spatial pattern of phi itself evolve? If k tells you that the hillside is steep, a tells you whether that steepness is increasing or flattening as you walk. If k tells you that a smell is stronger near the kitchen, a tells you whether the gradient of that smell is sharpening as cooking continues or smoothing out as the smell spreads. Curvature, which we sometimes denote by G in the broader journey, is another second-order symbol. If k tells you the slope at each point, Curvature tells you how that slope bends. It distinguishes gentle hills from sharp peaks, broad valleys from narrow dips, and flat plains from saddle shapes. You do not need to know the formula to feel curvature. You sense it when you drive along a road, and the steering wheel tells you whether the bend is sharp or gentle. Divergence, written in words as del.k, measures whether k is spreading out or converging. It asks, are the lines along which phi increases coming together like water flowing into a drain, or spreading apart like water emerging from a spring? When you watch smoke rising from a candle, you see regions where the flow lines come together and regions where they spread and diffuse. In the abstract language, divergence is the symbol for that gathering versus dispersing behavior. Together, these second-order letters deepen our ability to speak about change. They turn a simple sentence like phi is increasing into more refined sentences like phi is increasing faster and faster here, or phi is increasing, but the increase is slowing down, or phi is flat here, but will soon become steep. They are the adjectives and adverbs of the change language. Notice also how the three echoes remain present. Alpha is a time nuance. Curvature is a spatial nuance. Divergence and related quantities often connect motion and space. Even at second order, the hierarchy is not just a vertical stack. It is a woven pattern across time, space, and motion. Higher order, the ladder of refinements. Beyond second order, we find the infinite ladder of higher order derivatives. Third order derivatives ask, how does that change of change itself change? Fourth order derivatives ask, and how is that changing? And so on, up and up. At first, this can sound like overkill. Why would anyone ever care about a fourth or fifth order derivative? But remember that you already feel these levels in your body. When a car starts moving gently, you feel acceleration, which lives at second order. When the driver suddenly presses or releases the pedal and you lurch, you feel jerk, which lives at third order. When a roller coaster smoothly eases you into and out of strong accelerations so that you feel thrilled but not injured, the designers have paid attention to higher order derivatives to keep the changes in jerk smooth. Engineers talk about these higher orders when they try to make experiences comfortable, predictable, or safe. In the language of phi, higher order derivatives are there whenever we need extra subtlety. Most of the time, we can stop at first or second order, and that is enough to tell a good story. Weather forecasts, for example, often rely heavily on first and second order information. But occasionally, a phenomenon is so delicate that we need to reach higher on the ladder. Turbulence in a fluid, tiny distortions in a gravitational wave, or the fine details of a musical signal. The hierarchy guarantees that the rung is always there when we need it. Mathematically, there is no limit. We can keep differentiating, asking again and again, and how does that change? Conceptually, this means that phi language has unbounded descriptive power. No matter how complex or subtle a pattern of change is, there is always, at least in principle, a rung on the ladder high enough to see it clearly. Mixed derivatives, the space-time cross letters. There is another special family of letters in this system, the mixed derivatives, the space-time cross letters that tie the time syntax and the space syntax together. A mixed derivative might ask, how does the time rate of change vary as I move in space? Or, how does the spatial gradient vary as time passes? These are the letters that describe patterns like a wave forming and moving through water, a storm gathering and sweeping across a region, or a pattern of lights pulsing and drifting across a city at night. You can think of a simple example. Imagine a warm air mass moving eastward. At each location, the temperature is rising as the warm air arrives. That local rise is a time derivative. Across space, there is a gradient of temperature between the yet cool regions and the already warm ones. That is a spatial derivative. A mixed derivative tells you how quickly the warming at each place is changing as you move from west to east. It captures the moving, evolving boundary between warm and cool. Or imagine music at a festival. Standing near one speaker, the sound grows louder and softer as the song plays. That is a time derivative. Walking from one side of the field to the other, you feel the sound fade in and out across space. That is a spatial derivative. Now imagine walking while the music plays. The pattern of loudness you experience depends on both where you are and when you are there. A mixed derivative symbolizes exactly this kind of intertwined dependency. In the Holophase language, these mixed derivatives are the cross letters, the ones that make sure time and space are never treated as separate paragraphs, but as interwoven phrases of one sentence. They ensure that the three echoes, time, space, and motion, remain part of one story rather than three unrelated reports. Seeing the hierarchy as a whole. We can now step back and see the alphabet hierarchy system as a whole. At order 0, we have phi itself, the value of the field on its circle, the base from which everything else grows. This is the silent point before any question about change is asked. At first order, we have primary letters, omega for time, k for space, d phi for unified change, v for motion built from the other two. These answer the simplest questions about change. They are the basic who, where, when, and how fast of phi's story. At second order, we have nuance letters, alpha, curvature, divergence, and related symbols. These tell us how the first changes themselves are changing. They describe whether the story is calming, intensifying, bending, focusing, or dispersing. At higher orders, we have refinement letters, all the third, fourth, fifth, and beyond derivatives that we can call upon when the story of change demands more detail. They are like extra shades of color in a painting. Often, you can sketch with just a few, but the full palette is there when you need it. Alongside this, we have the split into three echoes. At each order, there are time-like letters, space-like letters, motion-like letters, and mixed letters that connect them. The hierarchy is not a single column, but a three-dimensional lattice. Order running upward, dimension running sideways, and mixing running diagonally. This lattice is the internal skeleton of the master tree. When you look at the tree of derivatives of phi, you are looking at this hierarchy in picture form. The trunk is phi. The first circle of branches is order 1. The second circle is order 2. The small twigs at the edge are higher orders. Some branches lean towards the time side, some towards the space side, some towards motion, some weave between them. But they are all one organism. It is worth pausing here and noticing how economical this is. From one field and one operation, take the derivative, we get an entire alphabet organized by order and dimension. We do not introduce dozens of unrelated building blocks. We do not say, for this phenomenon, we need a special symbol that lives by different rules. We keep returning to the same root question. How does phi change? Why this hierarchy matters? Why does this matter? It matters because it gives us a disciplined way to describe reality. It tells us how much detail we are including when we speak. At low order, we get broad brush descriptions. The temperature is higher here than there. The market is trending up. My mood is improving. These are first order statements. When we move to second order, we can say, the warming is accelerating. The market is rising, but the rise is slowing. My mood is improving faster than before. These are more nuanced, but they are still part of the same derivative ladder. At higher order, we can describe very delicate patterns. The acceleration itself is smoothing out. The volatility of the market is increasing in bursts. My mood is stabilizing after a period of wild swings. You may not use these sentences in daily conversation, but your nervous system feels them. Your body knows when change is smooth or jerky, when a pattern is calming or becoming erratic. The hierarchy also matters for falsifiability. The Holophase claim is that everything physically meaningful can be expressed using this hierarchical alphabet of derivatives of phi. If later we discover that certain essential quantities cannot be written in this way, if we need completely new primitives not expressible as derivatives of phi, then we will know that the alphabet was incomplete and the language needs to be expanded or revised. That is a clear, testable standard. It is not vague philosophy, it is a concrete challenge to the framework. If you would like to see how this hierarchy looks in full mathematical form, you can search for Holophase on Zenodo. There you will find the scientific papers that this audio journey is built on, with the precise definitions of omega, k, alpha, curvature, mixed derivatives, and the rest of the alphabet, all placed carefully inside the formal derivative tower of phi. Training your own perception with the hierarchy. Before we end, let us bring this back to your own way of seeing the world. The alphabet hierarchy system is not just a mathematical diagram. It is also a way of training your attention. You can look at anything that changes and ask, what is the zero-order description here? That is simply, what is it right now? You can then ask, what is the first-order description? That is, how is it changing? Then, what is the second-order description? How is that change itself changing? And if you feel curious, you can ask about the third and fourth layers. Take something simple like traffic on a busy road. Zero order. How many cars are there right now? First order. Is the flow increasing or decreasing? Are more cars entering than leaving? Second order. Is the increase speeding up or is the road clearing faster and faster? Third order. Are those changes smooth or do they happen in sudden bursts, like waves of congestion? Without writing an equation, you are already thinking in derivatives. Or think about your own learning of Holophase. Zero order. What do I know right now? First order. Am I understanding more week by week? Second order. Is my understanding accelerating, perhaps after some key idea clicked? Third order. Is that acceleration stabilizing into a steady pace of insight? You can feel these levels even as you listen to this audio. You can do this with your mood across a day, with the brightness of the sky at sunset, with the number of messages in your inbox, with the spread of a piece of news through social media. In each case, you will see that your mind naturally organizes these observations into layers. You notice the level, the trend, the acceleration, and the changing of the acceleration. What the Holophase language offers is a single, unified alphabet for all of these layers. It says, these are not separate types of thing. They are different orders of derivatives of one underlying field. When you train yourself to ask derivative questions, you are, in a very real sense, learning to think in phi. Before we close, let me place this part gently back inside the bigger journey of the Holophase language. The whole picture is simple, even if the details are rich. There is one field, phi, living on a circle. From its first change, the three dimensions appear together as echoes. Time as omega, space as k, motion as v, all born at once from the same differentiation. From there, every higher derivative is just a finer question about how phi changes, and each answer splits into three shadows again and again. The master tree is nothing more and nothing less than this endless branching of derivative questions and dimensional echoes. In this part, we have learned not only what some of those branches are called, but how they are arranged, and how high we have already climbed into the early canopy of that tree. As we continue, I will keep reminding you of this whole picture, so that no matter how technical a symbol sounds, you can always feel where it sits in the tree and how it helps phi tell the one continuous story of reality. Returning to phi and the master tree. As always, we must zoom out before we close. Remember, everything we have discussed is still just one field, phi, and its infinite tower of derivatives. We have not introduced any extra substances. We have only unfolded what was already hidden in the possibility that phi can change in time, in space, and through motion. In Episode 8, we are not yet attaching these symbols to particular forces, particles, or measurements. We are walking through the master alphabet itself, the pure structure of the Holophase language. So far in this episode, we have climbed from phi as a mathematical creature to phi as pure potential, to shift symmetry, to the circular value space, to derivatives as pure symbols, and now to the organized hierarchy of those symbols. We are still in the early levels of the master tree, but the pattern is emerging. One field, derivatives structured by order and dimension, all echoing through time, space, and motion. The tree is no longer an abstract drawing. It is becoming a living map of how reality can be written. In the next part, we will meet the complete dictionary at a point, the infinite jet of phi, where all derivatives at one location are gathered together like a local encyclopedia. We will see how truncating that jet gives us dialects, simplified but self-consistent sub-languages of reality, where only the first few levels of the hierarchy are kept and the rest are gently ignored. For now, as you step back into your everyday life, try to hear the hierarchy of change around you. When something moves, ask about its first order. When a trend appears, ask about its second order. When a pattern feels especially delicate or complex, remember that there are higher orders waiting to be noticed. In doing so, you're not just thinking more mathematically. You're learning to listen more closely to the way phi speaks through its infinite alphabet. Remember, the Holophase language is one field, phi, plus its infinite tower of derivatives, organized into this beautiful alphabet hierarchy system. In this episode, we have climbed further up the master tree of that language, from the trunk of phi to the first major branches of organized change. With each part, the outline of the whole tree becomes easier to see. The alphabet is organized. The hierarchy is clear. The letters are ready, waiting to be assembled into words, sentences, and entire stories of reality. Salam, and peace be upon you.